Welcome to One Man's Tracks, the second-hand music channel, and it's time for the second round of my Maynard James Keenan band breakdowns with another band named after private parts. It's his cheeky, groovy, outlandish rock outfit known as Puscifer. Starting out in the early to mid-90s as an evolution of the MJK bit bands, it was originally called Umlaut and was a premier improvisational hardcore band. Puscifer made their first appearance on the debut episode of Bob Odenkirk and David Cross's Mr. Show. Essentially, it's an alternate creative outlet for MJK to explore more whimsical or facetious musical ideas. It's a playful but not completely unserious band. Puscifer still does touch upon many of the themes that are present in Keenan's other material, such as addiction, religion, feminism, loss, conscientiousness, and righteousness, drawing from his personal experiences and using this band to process those issues that he finds pressing. In this instance, he does so while working through a variety of genres, styles, and talented artists to create anything from country to electronic to industrial funk rock tunes, all while never missing a beat. Once more, creating an exceptional catalog of no-skip records. While he may have worked with a large rotating cast of session musicians, Puscifer does have a few official members, with Matt Mitchell, the producer and multi-instrumentalist, being there since the debut, and guitarist and singer Karina Round joining in 2009. Her husband, Failure's bassist Greg Edwards, has joined as a touring member of the group alongside drummer Gunnar Olsen. A fabulously engaging and animated group I had the good fortune of stumbling into in Hamburg for an incredible show. I'd already made plans at that point to dive into Tool's catalog, but ever since then I've been hooked on all things Maynard. I just can't wait for this latest Puscifer album, so without further ado, let's get into my personal rankings of the 4 LPs that are out now, based on my own personal enjoyment of them from worst to best. An incredibly challenging task, once again, considering just how magnificent and diverse all these albums are. Picking a least favorite Puscifer project has taken a lot of listens, and there was essentially a big bottleneck, a 3-way tie for second place here, because they're just so good. But had to choose, so I've decided that my least favorite Puscifer album as of right now is their October 2011 release through Puscifer Entertainment, produced by Matt, MJK, and Josh Eustace. It's Conditions of My Parole. The band's sophomore record, it sees their theatrical rock embarking on a cathartic journey with a more coherent and grounded narrative than their debut. It's a rootsier, dronier Puscifer, heavily influenced by Maynard's life in Arizona amongst his vines. This storied LP starts out with Tiny Monsters, a very much introducing sort of number with lovely harmonies. It sets the stage for an adventurous, modern tragic comedy. A starlight spaghetti western that's not afraid to show some self-awareness, both mocking itself and the listener. Following it is the River Song, one of my favorites, titled Green Valley. It starts this epic off with its first trial, where you dutifully lay yourself out and surrender to organic momentum, faithfully flowing with beautifully building instrumental waves. It washes us softly into the angelic ode to rain titled Monsoons. But before the rain can come, we must first reflect on some forgotten universal truths told to us in Telling Ghosts, a heavy, haunted, and bitter track whose themes are very reminiscent of the APC songs The Noose and The Doomed, demanding perspective and sustainability. Horizons gives instructions on letting go of the past, Maynard releasing his mother's ashes into the soil, returning them to the earth, and then becoming wine, with help from the oncoming storm. track that's absolutely phenomenal and reminds me of another new A Perfect Circle song, but this one's called Man Overboard, and it's like a treacherous, triumphant hourglass. It's a banger that is the one real turn it up moment on this album, whose tension does so well to rock the listener back and forth. Perhaps a premature climax, but what do you expect to happen when you've got all hands on deck? It's an all too brief victory as something immaterial becomes lost in Toma, a rage fueled composition with revenge fantasies and a bit of a prison sex sounding message. It's not at all a bad track. I find it annoyingly catchy, stuck in my head when I'd rather have Green Valley or Man Overboard bouncing around instead. I'm not crazy about the blown out religious hypocrisy of The Rapture, and I don't really jive all that much with The Weaver, but I still think the title track is a lot of fun, like a supernatural crime thriller that's a bit up for interpretation. Is it real? Is it in his head? Who knows? There's also these sweet atmospheric send-offs called Oceans and Tumbleweed that comfort you and pull you towards your destiny, the latter of the two revisiting some previous musical motifs and wrapping up this second full-length LP nicely. A solid blending of cleansing and campiness, Conditions of My Parole is an excellent, sophisticated telling of the burdens of growth while slipping in the odd, hilarious, immature innuendo. It is just unfortunately too soft and sweet to be my go-to Puscifer LP outside of moments of quiet reflection, but it might also be the only album of theirs that has songs I could slip onto my mom's dinner music playlist. Coming out the year after Maynard's Blood into Wine documentary, the parallels between this album and winemaking are clear, and as a farmer myself, you'd think this album might rank a bit higher, but maybe like a fine wine, it's destined to slowly grow on me and work its way up the list as I age. Sitting ever so slightly above Conditions for the bronze is the band's latest effort. Their grandiose, analytical, pandemic-predicting project, released through AMG and Alchemy Records, produced once more by Matt Mitchell and the Puscifer crew. It's Existential Reckoning. A little remix album placeholder there for you. A resolute alternative dance rock record whose production itself goes through its own evolution across this track list, from crude and crispy to its meditative middle and then finishing off softer and smoother. Existential Reckoning embraces a more artificial atmosphere to enhance and hammer home its pro-science and anti-digital age mantras. It starts off with one of my favorite 4-track runs in any Puscifer release. The groovy bass lines and catchy hooks preaching awareness on bread and circus and the underwhelming, as well as the relentless, ominous foreboding of the absolute bangers, apocalyptical and gray area really get this thing rocking right out the gate. Theorem then reiterates our need to slow down and rationalize our reality, but it does so in this odd, repetitive, simple, aerobic warm-up sort of aesthetic that doesn't really do it for me, and it kind of seems to clash with Upgrade's distrust of the very technologies that modern science has provided us with. It's certainly a conflict, but it has a warranted message of not leaping before you look that unfortunately musically and thematically is a bit of a stumbling block for me when listening to this LP. Both are not so egregious that I actively dislike them, just a rough adjustment after this album's exceptional initial run. Bullet Train to Iowa, however, is a great psychedelic escape in the center here. A cool way of musically and poetically displaying the act of letting go or ego death. Sadly, Personal Prometheus as well as the returning introductory themes of A Singularity both have cooler names than they have performances. Personal Prometheus being the longest and floatiest Puscifer song, it does pretty well to maintain its momentum throughout, as well as help clarify some of the prior mixed messaging, that being to use these rapidly advancing technologies to enhance and transform the collective experience in a positive way. And of course, he's preaching to the choir with this one, but I guess I'm just still a sucker for the more energetic and less self-serious side of this group. The last three are what elevate this album and solidify its placement for me. The tremendous groove of Postulus, the spirited fake affront that does occasionally fall into that obnoxiously catchy category, and the absolutely fantastic closer Bedlamite with its message of resilience through diversity delivered by the best drunken oracle Arizona has to offer. Here's a clip. Everything will be alright. Certainly the most pressing Puscifer album, with Maynard expressing his concerns for misinformation and the dangers of the illogical emotional decision making that we make as humans, correctly predicting how a bunch of people would react to something like the pandemic with an overwhelming air of falsely self-assured individualism that just corrodes society and destroys our ability to work collectively towards a common good. An interesting new approach with some great songs, some alright ones, and a vital message, but just a little too somber and weighty for what I'm looking to get out of a Puscifer project. There's one Puscifer album, I think, that strikes a fine balance between existential's dissonant digital irreverence and the reflective naturalistic cycles of conditions. It formulates and draws out an atmosphere so thick with anxious tension that you'll feel woozy as you're pulled through my second favorite Puscifer LP, released in July of 2015 through Puscifer Entertainment, produced by Puscifer, and sharing a name with a Netflix Pornhub documentary. It's Money Shot. An awe-inspiring amalgam of moving, weary post-industrial rock songs, Money Shot's cool, trance-like ambiance is instantly immersive. An album that doesn't wait to be blasted, it demands it right out the get-go with the absolute slammers Galileo and Augustina, calling ominously once more for logic and truth to push past ignorance. This throbbing, chaotic intro sets us up nicely for its propulsive follow-up. Judging based on what he was going through at the time, I believe these tracks might be symbolic of preparing for and bringing a child into the world, leading us to the great surrender of the lead single, Grand Canyon. A strong, steady building piece of uplifting, spacey rock that finishes on an encouraging high. An interesting encounter with a higher power at a music festival comes next with Simultaneous, a track I can't decide whether it's awesome or absolutely extraordinary. Either way, around the midway point, this interview with God concludes, and this whole track culminates in this incredibly rolling, engaged, banging finale that I can never get out of my head. Find a way through, around or over. This ridiculous run is topped off with the super groovy ripper of a title track. Fast, in your face, with an environmental message. All I can say is, hot damn. So much for a good 4-track run. This is probably the best 5-track run. The Arsonist does have a decent groove, and its concern for isolated self-sabotage is poignant, but it's sadly this album's annoyingly catchy tune. I have similar feelings about the shut up and listen message of The Remedy, but in that case, I think the song comes together much more harmoniously. Now, Smoke and Mirrors is my biggest sticking point when it comes to this project. It's a song that feels like they took the track A Stranger and stretched it out into this eerie, spacious revenge piece that doesn't feel like it really goes anywhere. I do think the version with Flippant does a much better job at transitioning out of this lull into another fantastic track called Life of Brian. This one's just a hilarious stab in the cock to anyone trying to make any short-sighted assumptions. So I guess fuck me, right? Autumn is a longing closer with a realistic message. You can either let it sink you into hopelessness or motivate you to achieve, because everything ends. But it's not over yet, baby. Money Shot's selling point of potently replicating the sensation of anxious tension is ultimately what holds it back from being number one. Its heavy-handedness without enough big payoffs really leaves me feeling a bit too taxed from the experience and not quite ready to jump back into its dizzying depths right away. There's only one LP left, so let's get right into the bewildering, raunchy, rhythmic art rock of Puscifer's debut, released in October of 2007 through BMG and Puscifer Entertainment, produced by Matt and the band. It's my very favorite Puscifer release yet. V is for Vagina. Such a driving record with such heavy, gritty, and groovy performances across the board. The fact that its overall picture is fairly incoherent doesn't really matter. Maynard's delivery is so wonderfully dark and textured and contains those usual messages of think for yourself and get comfortable with change, but I see it like a party album to throw on and release inhibitions. Feel the rain on your skin. Super cathartic. I love letting myself get wrapped up in this tight package. From start to finish, I am incessantly hooked to this sexy electro-funk rock fusion masterpiece. I mean, how could someone possibly resist the intoxicating pull of a queen bee or vagina mine? Mama Said is an incredibly uplifting show of strength and maturity amidst the innuendos, and then drunk with power nefariously drags you back into the sticky grime. When my least favorite track is a song like The Undertaker, it really highlights just how incredible this LP is. This haunting and vengeful tune is a hardcore breakup song that is just a little over the top for me. And sure, Trekka, as well as the previous Drunk with Power, play in that very similar, sinister atmosphere, but I think those two move me just a little more effectively. I really like the interpolations they do on the militaristic melodies and themes on Trekka, as well as Dozo. They tweak them into these incredibly dubious, weary stompers that I just love. Indigo Children fucking slaps, and I just can't get enough of those infectious vocals at the end of Sour Grapes. Their messages of evolve, adapt, and break free really help to hammer those two home. Then concluding with the sinful, jazzy Revelations 22:20 that cautions us against the dangers of temptation, before in some cases the song Lighten Up Francis comes in with its driving funky beat and keeps this party fart rock train a-chugging along, nicely flowing from track to track, even to some extent energetically mirroring itself across its track list, creating a nearly perfect circle of Puscifer incantations. I have such a fantastic time listening to V is for Vagina, a great record for the road, in headphones, or through big boy speakers. I've been having a blast banging these MJK creations. Campier and more eclectic than his other outfits, Puscifer is a wonderful window into the quirky, chaotic inner workings of this legendary singer-songwriter, making off-the-wall ideas stick with his endlessly hooky deliveries and his uncanny ability to bring together so many masterful musicians in harmony. Wow, what a guy. I'd love to know your thoughts and rankings of Puscifer's discography. I really can't wait for that new one. If you want to hear me get into the remix albums and EPs, leave a like and comment on this video. To top off Maynard May-hem, I've left his most prolific band for last to hopefully minimize my ignorant takes, and maybe I'm saving the best for last. We'll see soon. We got Tool, worst to best video and guide coming out soon. Subscribe to get those when they come out. Until then, thanks so much for watching. Take good care. I'll see you then. It's always gonna be sour grapes with you, boy, until you get right with Jesus.